Westman, am approved from October 2020 at the NVC, son of permanent resident over 21 from Jamaica. How much longer? I don't know what your priority date is, Westman. I need to know what your priority date is. And I also need to know, when you say approved, does that mean you are DQ'd, documentarily qualified? And then I assume you're in Jamaica. You're going to process in Kingston. Just confirm that as well. And then I can answer your question. Cody, 1876 Jamaica, with a question. Good day. What are some questions they ask at a green card interview based on VAWA? Please, thank you. They're going to ask you questions related to the bona fides of your marriage. They're going to ask you questions related to, you've given a story about abuse, so they're going to ask you questions about that. And they're going to ask you questions about good moral character, if there's any issues about good moral character in your application. And finally, they're going to ask you questions about admissibility. Have you ever made a misrepresentation, a fraud, any criminal records, things that would make you not eligible for a green card? But it all depends on your particular facts. But that's the general gist of the interview. And of course, they're going to go through many of the questions that were asked of you on the I-45 application, especially the ones that you checked off yes and no, just to make sure that they were all answered properly. Hamida Amura with a pre-schmooze question of the day. My I-130 processing time was reduced by 6 months. And when I checked online, okay, good. Is that a glitch, or are they speeding up the process? Well, it seems in your case, they're speeding it up. So congratulations. That's really good. And Chosen Rothschild, also with a pre-schmooze question of the day. Hey, Uncle Brad, can someone who enters through the land border before May 11, 2023, change status from asylum seeker to marriage? It depends on how they entered the United States of America. If you were found paroled into the United States, then yes, you can file an adjustment based on marriage. Most people were charged in the NTA, which is the notice to appear, as entering without inspection. And then you would have to argue out that that designation is wrong, that you did not enter without inspection, that in fact you were paroled. Because most people, you hear the story time and time again, is they stepped their toe into the United States. They were picked up by Customs and Border Patrol within minutes or less than an hour. They were held in jail for 2 or 3 days, and then they were paroled out into the United States and told to come back for court. Now, that sounds like you were paroled into the United States. That doesn't sound like you entered the country, remained here illegally, and then were picked up by immigration and bailed out of jail. That sounds more like parole than bail to me. So in that particular case, your lawyer, and hopefully you have a good lawyer, would have to argue that factually you did not enter the country without inspection. You were found at the border. Your toe was across the border. That's still at the border. And you were picked up by immigration. You were held in detention, and then you were paroled into the United States of America. So that's on a fact-by-fact basis, but that's probably most people's stories. So my answer is yes, with a caveat that it has to be argued out in court. Nina Cole with a question. If a lawful permanent resident marries a person out of status, what's the process? The process is file an I-130 visa petition, and if that person is out of status, they're either going to A, wait for you to become a citizen and then adjust your status, or 2, do a provisional waiver, go home and come back. But either way, go get married and start that process. Chums Williams with a pre-schmooze question of the day. My grandmother, who's an American citizen, wants to file for my dad. He's 67 years old and married to my mom. How long do you think the filing is going to take? Whew, at least 15 years. So if your dad is 67, I don't know how old grandma is, but it's going to take a long time. Daryl Winneba, I am on my 2nd semester as the F1 student. I received my work permit for I-45. Can I work without harming my student status? The answer is you cannot work legally on a student visa unless you're working on campus, or you'll get curricular practical training or optional practical training when school is over. What you can do, Daryl, is after 1 full year in the United States, you can apply for a work permit based on hardship that you were, and usually the hardship is something like this. I mean, I don't know your particular situation. I'm just giving you a general idea. Is somebody was promising me to put me through school, grandma, mom, my cousin, whoever it may have been. And they promised to put me through school and pay my room and food and tuition, etc. But now either grandma lost her job, grandma and I got into a fight and we don't talk anymore. Whatever the reason is, that money that I was promised has dried up. So now I need to work to finish my studies. That would be a hardship argument, but you're only allowed to do that after 1 full year in the United States on student status. Arawala. Hi, Uncle Brad. Can my sibling, who is a U.S. citizen, withdraw her application initially filed for me with the USCIS and have my spouse refile for me after getting married? The answer is yes, but your sibling does not have to withdraw the case. You could have 2 cases going at the same time, and whichever one comes in first, that's what you get your green card on. So I would tell your sister, just leave it alone. Use it as a backup still, but go through on the marriage case because obviously that would be a lot faster. Mustafa Fahado, also pre-schmooze question of the day. How long does it take on an initial I-765 application based on pending asylum? Well, you can't file for an EAD until day 150 of asylum pending. You can't get issued the EAD until day 180, and then usually it's several weeks later. So let's call it 60 to 90 days. GB King. Hello, Uncle Brad. How long would it take to get a work authorization and travel document if one sibling who is a U.S. citizen files for the other? 1 full generation. And who knows if at the end of that full generation, like 15 years, you're even eligible to adjust your status. So yeah, let your sibling file for you, but nothing's happening for a very long time. Teshwar Jaswal. I had my VAWA approved in April 2022 and had an RFE for a birth certificate for the I-45, which was responded to immediately. After we had no update, when we wrote to Vermont, they said my case is in the field. Maybe in the field means that they're investigating you, that went to a field officer, or it went to a local field office. That means if it went to a local field office, that means you're going to be scheduled for an interview soon. I'm not sure what in the field you're referring to. All right, last pre-schmooze question of the day. Wilfredo Castellanos. According to the United States Postal Service, USCIS received my RFE for a bona fide marriage on May 22nd. No update. Is that normal? It is. It's not even a month yet, Wilfredo. Got to give him 120 days minimum before you start asking that question. So it was May 22nd, June, July. Come back in September 22nd and ask that question. Thanks for watching. For more Brad Show Live, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.